Ford, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Dean?
Here.
Mr. Sharp?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Falconer?
Here.
Mr. Gould? Mr. Tanner?
Here.
Mr. Bender?
Here.
Mr. Groby?
Here.
Mr. Canulet?
Here.
Mr. Belisario?
Here.
Ms. O'Brien? Here. Mr. Stefanczyk?
Here.
Mr. R.T.?
Here.
Mr. Smith? You have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, the first item tonight under appointments is Resolution CS number C-3793, resolution to appoint 2 members to the Board of Directors for the St. Tammany Parish Communications District number 1. And we have 3 nominees, Mr. Mark Dyer, Councilman Marty Gould, and Councilman Jay Groby. And we will need council members, as the sheets are passed out, to vote for 2 and only 2 of those 3.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
you're going to ask the other council members to see if they have any other names to nominate, so we can close the floor. Just those 3.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it was closed at last meeting, but I'll double check. Does anybody have any other names that they wish to nominate? Okay. Leave it closed. Okay, while our staff are tabulating the results, we're going to move to some guidelines on resolution number 1, which is CS number C-3794. Resolution to set the salaries of the employees of the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office pursuant to Louisiana House Act 181. When we do get the results tabulated, then we'll stop the resolution item and we'll announce the results of the 2 appointments. To lead this off, I'm going to go to our legal counsel, Mr. Terry Hand, who is going to provide for the council, the people in the audience, and the people at home on TV some particulars about Act 181 and what the council can and cannot do.
A simple reading of the Act indicates that it is the requirement of this governing authority to establish the salary. It has nothing to do with establishing the position. So therefore, it is your duty and task to establish the salary of the employees of the coroner's office.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hand. The salary that we have before us tonight is the position which the coroner's office has identified as executive director. Let me just say a few things. In dealing very seriously with Act 181, which the state legislature voted on and the governor signed, and gave the council authority as the parish governing authority over any and all salaries, it was important from all of our council perspective that we perform our own in-house research. I do want to say that we got feedback from the public, from citizens groups, with various information. We certainly appreciate that. we were under an obligation to check all of this information out. Some of it was very accurate, some of it was not quite so, and for the most part, we didn't have anything that was completely out of line. But what we knew is that we had to get everything firsthand, using our council staff. And for the last 4 weeks, that's what we have done. We assigned that task to our council administrator, Mr. Don Henderson, who is sitting over here. Don performed a yeoman's job, met periodically with Terry and myself, both in person and in conference calls on the phone. I will tell you that whenever we felt the need to double-check any information, even if it was just a hint or, a feeling that maybe we should just, let's double-check it, we did so. Our research, we included in our research, first, the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office. We wanted to know as much as possible about the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office, all the positions, salaries, etc. We also looked at the East Baton Rouge Coroner's Office. We fully researched that through Don, spoke to the individual higher-ups, and the third one we did was the Jefferson Parish Coroner's Office. All in our region or close to our metro region. The one thing that all three of these entities have in common is that all three of these coroner's offices are 3 of the top 5 parishes in population in the state of Louisiana. And we thought that that would be a good model to use in comparing to St. Tammany Parish. We fully discussed the Jefferson, East Baton Rouge, and St. Tammany Parish Coroner. The Jefferson Parish Coroner's Office uses a position called the Director of Operations because they have a part-time coroner who has a full-time medical practice. That Director of Operations had more than 20 years with Plaquemines Parish on the investigative side, and of course has a degree, a college degree as well. In the East Baton Rouge Coroner's Office, they were the complete opposite. Their coroner, and as we looked into it very closely, their coroner is a very, very, very hands-on coroner. Very, very proactive, very involved in all aspects of his operation. He does not have, by his style, he does not have anyone directly below him other than everyone, okay, in different line items, all right? That coroner, we did find out, does do some emergency room work on occasion at one or more of the hospitals in East Baton Rouge Parish, but for the most part is a very full-time coroner. In the case of St. Tammany Parish, we already knew this part, and that was that our coroner is a very part-time coroner, very similar to Jefferson Parish. but is paid as a full-time coroner. The East Baton Rouge coroner is paid approximately $200,000 a year, and our St. Tammany Parish coroner is paid slightly above $200,000 a year. And of course, he has a full-time medical practice, just as the Jefferson Parish coroner has a full-time medical practice. The Jefferson Parish coroner receives a salary between $72,000 and $77,000 a year as a part-time coroner. Let me go through the procedure here. We will only be voting on one salary tonight, and that's the salary of the executive director, which is before us. The reason that the resolution is stated the way it's stated is because it mimics the way Act 181 was written, and that is, we have the right to set salaries of all or any of the employees of the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office. So the procedure will be as follows. I will be asking for a motion and a second from two of my colleagues on the council tonight for a proposed salary for the position of executive director for St. Tammany Parish. The requested amount is $115,000. And once we have a motion and a second before we vote, then we will go to the coroner's representative and the audience for any comments, any statements, et cetera. And I would ask that, I know this is a major topic for people, I understand that, we all do. But I would ask, as we always do, if we could, let's not stay repetitive on statements or questions, et cetera, okay? If you've heard someone else from the public make that statement or ask that question and it's been answered, please move on to another question or whatever, just, so we can move through this, okay? Once that occurs, we will come back to the council for any council comments, et cetera, and then we will take it to a vote. A majority vote will be needed for the salary to be established. If that salary amount is defeated, then we would need a motion on a new salary, because we do have an obligation on the council to set a salary for the position of executive director by Act 181. So at this point, I would ask any member of the council if they wish to make a motion on the salary for executive director, and I need you to do so with the dollar amount annually.
All right, I'd like to make...
Was it Mr. Belisario or Mr. Stefanski?
I'm going to let him make the motion. I want to bring up something else. We normally allow 5 minutes on each side for discussions, and we allow, and that's not going to work tonight,
No.
I don't think. So
Right.
we need to set some time limit for the speakers
Yeah.
before we go into the motion and everything. I think we should set the rules, and I don't have any problem what it is, but I think we need to be consistent.
Yeah, and Steve, that's why I was trying to say, and I'm asking everyone's indulgence that, we not beat a dead horse, so to speak, on whatever the motion is. Make your comments, your opinions, whatever. But I think we just need to be consistently succinct and not repetitive, okay?
But you don't want to set a time limit
Mr. Chairman?
per person.
I'm willing to set a time limit per person, but I'm also, what I'm trying to say, Steve, if a person is being repetitive,
Right.
I'm going to, in a kind way, try to say, would you please move to another topic, okay? So, Steve, what do you think we should go on a time frame?
I would suggest, at least, since the majority of people are going to be talking one way or another, the coroner should have probably 5 minutes to be able to explain his position, unless he needs more, and probably 3 minutes per person for anybody else in the audience.
Yeah.
Or you could go to 5, but
Yeah.
we shouldn't go over 5 minutes. We don't allow any more than that on appeals.
We'll start with 5 minutes per side, and then.
No, I didn't say per side.
Excuse me?
I said per person,
But you want 3 minutes per person?
yes.
Mr.
3 to 5
Chairman.
minutes per person.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
can I suggest we do 15 to 20 minutes? And then if there's a need for any more time, we can vote again for more time.
I would be more inclined to that. I think 3 minutes per person might get a little bit lengthy and boring, if I could say. But let's start with 15 minutes per side, and see where we go. Is the council in agreement with that? Okay, all right. That'll be a good starting point. So I need a motion from a council member with the annual salary amount, and then I'll need a second. Mr. Belisario?
I'd like to make a motion to set the salary at $80,000 for the executive director.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion to set the salary for the executive director at $80,000 per year, and a second by Mr. Ortiz, and we will hold there. Mr. Branton, would you like to come to the microphone first? Oh, and excuse me 1 second, Mr. Branton. Let me just read out the results. The two people who have been voted in as representatives for the 911 Communication District are council members Marty Gould and Councilman Jake Roby. So congratulations, and we appreciate Mr. Mark Dyer for allowing his name to be put forward. Thank you. Yeah, I need a motion to appoint. Motion by Mr.
Second.
Canulette to appoint, second by Mr. Belisario. Please vote.
Motion is unanimous, 1 absent.
Thank you. Mr. Brandt.
And Mr. Bender, as a point of order, as I understand it, Mr. Canulet's motion is 15 minutes aside, so I don't plan on using all 15 minutes. I'd like to save some time to come back for rebuttal,
Yeah.
if that's acceptable.
Absolutely.
Okay. As you know, I came here about 4 weeks ago to talk about the executive director's position at the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office. And under the Act, you do have the authority to set the salaries. We have furnished you with the information regarding the proposed candidate, and I believe we all know that this candidate is extremely qualified. I did submit, and I don't know if you've had an opportunity to review the 4-page letter that I sent, because I was hoping I would get some questions from council members of parish government so that I could kind of understand what might still be needed in terms of information from the coroner's office. However, since I didn't get that, I tried to estimate what questions might be anticipated and address those as best I can.
Excuse me, Mr. Brandt. Now, correct me was this the letter you sent today?
That was the letter I sent today because I didn't hear back and I wanted to get something to the council.
Okay.
And let me just start out with, as I said before, and I agree with what Councilman Canulette said last time, we have outstanding men and women doing outstanding work in the coroner's office every day. And this is the only coroner's office in the state of Louisiana that does handle all 5 areas, which I mentioned last time: psych evaluations, toxicology, DNA, death investigations, and the more. The coroner's office is not considered full-time or part-time by statute, but I did want to note one thing, because I pulled the Louisiana Board of Ethics filing for East Baton Rouge Parish, and just as a point of clarification, I'd like to note that the doctor at the East Baton Rouge Parish notes that he is a part-time employee, and he does make $200,000 per year. The distinction with Jefferson Parish is they do not do their own DNA work. That is done by the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office, and I appreciate all the research that the council has performed. The voters, when they approved the millage, wanted a first-rate organization, and as Mr. Canulet said, they have one. They've got outstanding people. We have a need for an executive director. No coroner that I am aware of in the state is hands-on, full-time, managing the day-to-day operations. In this situation, I'm talking now about the office of the coroner, not the coroner himself. I'm talking about staffing the office so that it runs smoothly, that it continues its high caliber of work product, and continues to maintain its accreditations and to move forward. One of the questions that I did want to address briefly was why we had a lawyer before, but now we want a forensic science person. If you look at the history of the last few years, the coroner's office was buying land, building a building, entering into all kinds of contracts. It was helpful to have a lawyer on site to handle those day-to-day operations. Now with the resignation of Ms. Como, we have an opportunity to address the ongoing needs because the structure is finished. That's done. We have the ongoing needs, the ongoing daily protocols, the ongoing accreditations. In my letter, and I have copies for those of you who didn't see it or people in the public that haven't seen it, we do toxin DNA for every law enforcement agency in this parish. Since we opened the toxicology unit at the end in 2010, if you look at page 4, we have had a tremendous increase in this. Toxicology is necessary to evaluate several things, including the criminals who commit negligent homicides, who commit other crimes in the state. DNA evidence is used to identify people where blood evidence is left at a scene. DNA is also used to identify victims who are found and we don't know who they are. The St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office is a major part of providing and protecting the quality of life in this parish. The executive director's salary that we have proposed is not high in a national standard. It is in the 64th percentile. The gentleman that we have asked you to consider and why we believe that 115 is appropriate meets all of the qualifications, meets all existing national standards, has the experience to step into the job and provide the forensic management that is needed on a day-to-day basis. $115,000 is a little bit above what he presently earns. It is not a huge raise for this person. To compare it to Jefferson is a comparison in my mind of apples to oranges, and I understand the council has done its research. I would respectfully disagree. And I believe that a forensic director with forensic management skills can also address cost savings because we may not need to go down the road that in the future we might consider, because that person will have the skills to identify it, address it, assess it, and make the proper recommendation. The other thing is that if we have a situation, and it's entirely up to the council tonight, if $80,000 is what you approve, I go back to the coroner's office with that figure. I respectfully would submit that $80,000 will not get the type of qualified candidate that we need and that we deserve. This is not a broad-based general business management. This is a very specialized area in which management skills are also scientific in nature. We have a $4.5 million annual budget. $115,000 is not out of line. The current accrediting agency is recommending this type of person. We agree. So I'm asking you, and I'll save the rest of my time, to approve a salary of $115,000 so that we can go forward and move the office forward, and that we can bring on board someone that I believe we all agree is extraordinarily qualified and would serve this parish very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Branton. You want me to go to the other side, or you want to ask a question?
Well, I want to make a statement, actually.
Right now. Okay, Mr. Grovey.
Mr. Branton has 9 minutes left.
Mr. Chair, for the record and for the public who did not receive copies of the first letter Mr. Branton mailed to us, I received that record, as well as my co-council members, about 2 weeks ago. It was dated 4 days before it was mailed, and it did not include the referenced enclosures. So I had nothing to reference. Until I got here this evening, I did not get what Mr. Branton was referencing. So unfortunately, we would have called you had you put the enclosures that you had referenced in the letter. I want to make sure the public understands that. We did do due diligence if we'd have been given the information. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Groby. Okay, can I see a show of hands of people who would like to speak from, okay? So we have 3 people. Mr. Franzo.
Good evening, Council. Thank you. President Brista, thank you. I just wanted to address something that happened this afternoon. You received this a letter from Mr. Branton, and I think some comments have to be made addressing that. And I don't know if you've looked at it in detail, but often, and I put these comments down, I wanted to send a reply back to you on it, but obviously time was short. Anyway, often in the rush to make a point, information found in reports can be selectively used, which we think it has been in this case. And I'm going to make some references to his paper that was sent to you. And this is his statement. In the course of its deliberations and review of the forensic science community, it becomes obvious to the committee that truly meaningful advances will not come without significant leadership from the federal government. According to the charter for St. Tammany Parish, we are not the federal government. The forensic science community lacks the necessary governance to structure to pull itself up from the current weaknesses. Insufficiencies in current system cannot be addressed by simply increasing the staff within the existing crime laboratories and medical examiners' offices. Cannot be addressed by simply increasing staff. That's pretty clear. This is in the Strengthening Forensic Science report that Mr. Branton is making reference to in his letter to you. On some other notes I want to bring to your attention, in Mr. Branton's letter, the current accrediting agency for the Coroner's Crime Laboratory recommends that the directors have forensic science experience. The ASCLD statement he references differentiates between the laboratory director, who performs a technical supervisory role, and the executive director, who is not a technical role. As an executive director with forensic science management experience will save the coroner's office money by minimizing the need for outside consultants to provide forensic management support. If the coroner is proposing to save money, perhaps he should reduce his salary in line with other coroners, adjusting for the 6 to 8 hours per week that actually works in his position. I want to make another note, too, reference to his report he sent to you. He did comparisons to areas that population bases are way more than St. Tammany Parish. Columbus has a population of almost 800,000. El Paso County, Colorado has a population of over 600,000. And Los Angeles, California, making a comparison, 3.8 million. St. Tammany Parish in 2011 had a population of 236,000. As you know, I sent a report to all of you that we did our homework. I met, not just me, but several of us met with the East Baton Rouge coroner. I was in discussions, even at my home, with the ex-coroner who retired in October from Jefferson Parish. I've been in discussions with New York. I sent you a report yesterday as well. I was in discussions with coroners throughout the United States, Missouri, Iowa, Ohio, Alabama, Texas, and all other big cities, most of them larger than here in St. Tammany Parish. And one thing that was consistent in all these ones that I talked to, not one had a title executive director underneath the coroner. It did not exist. They had administrative, they had operational, but not one had an executive director. And if you guys spoke with the East Baton Rouge coroner, Dr. Clark, he said, that is my function. That is what I do. I am CEO, I am executive director. My question is, why doesn't Galvin do his job? He is getting paid. Last year was $239,000 he took home. He's less than part-time. I look at him as being an absentee coroner for St. Tammany Parish. Now we're straddled with the thought of hiring an executive director. The taxpayers are burdened enough. You guys, and you ladies and gentlemen, and I apologize for that, you have an opportunity here. And the opportunity has been put before us because of the House, the Senate, the governor, all giving you the right to control the financial backing of the St. Tammany Parish coroner, control the finances. To me, when I look at that, what happened in Baton Rouge, and I look with the governor signing it, and you all voting 13-1 for his resignation, and for the president asking for his resignation, with the audit that came out just about a month ago, showing all those discrepancies and poor management, you all should look at this and say, come on, enough is enough. Get your house in order. Don't ask for more money. Get your house in order, and then we'll talk. There needs to be better basis and a better strength, and now you have the opportunity. You're at a time where you have the position to say no. What I'm asking, I respectfully ask you guys to consider this. I forgot you council to consider this. That's my New York stuff. To consider this. I would like to see you defund the position. Defund it to where it's a minimum wage, 40-hour-a-week salary. And what that does, it takes Galvin back in where he has to work and earn his money. Right now, you're just giving him a green light. With this $80,000, they're going to hire somebody, and Galvin will continue to be an absentee coroner. He will continue his full-time work in Slidell. He will continue his consultancy work. Let me tell you something else. What we know, and I think this has all been public record, what we know, he has never performed an autopsy as stated in court. He does not supervise laboratory personnel. He does not perform death investigations. We also know he has limited involvement in psychiatric evaluations. As you know from the reports that I sent you, which maybe you've seen them before, we are paying a consultant $15,000 a month for psychiatric evaluations. Now, yes, they're necessary, but it's another cost that's thrown on top of that. So my question is, what does Peter Galvin do to earn $239,000 besides being a project manager for construction? Ultimately, I am asking for one thing from the council: to consider Mr. Branton's request of copy of the very important report he mentioned. Read it, discuss it, evaluate it. Maybe have an independent, qualified group of people to make a determination what is best for St. Tammany Parish. We're not here we should not be rushed. And respectfully, Chairman Bender, we should not be bullied into making a decision and forcing the taxpayers to pay more money on top of a way over-the-top coroner's office with a budget we know is well overfunded. It's time, and you have it. You have the chance to draw the line in the sand and say, no, clean your house, Peter Galvin, clean it, before we award you an opportunity for an executive director so you can be an absentee coroner. Thank you.
Jerry, they have 6 minutes left.
Okay, this side has 6 minutes left. Just as a comment, as our attorney, Mr. Hand, said, we have before us, and the state legislature has given the parish council the responsibility of setting a salary for a position that is requested of us. That is the limit of the authority that has been given to us as it comes to position and salary, okay? I need to reiterate that. Mr. Ernst.
Yes, thank you. President Brister, lady and gentlemen of the council. I'm Carl Ernst, resident of Lacombe. I'm on the board of CCST and CCL as an advisor. I'm also on the Inspector General Task Force. Retired soldier, 33 years in public service in the military, but enough in dealing with resources and organizations that I think I have some background that may be useful. I'm not going to dovetail on what Rick said very closely, just some comments. First, about organization. I know that the position is off the table. I got it loud and clear, I understand that. However, the rationale and the justification for the CEO position is a recharacterization of a position. Hence, in my background, that makes it a new position. It's not the same position that is currently vacant. It is a different position. Now, I know it's off the table, so I'm not going to go into detail, but I think you're effectively being asked to approve a salary for an entirely new position. Characterize it any way you want. Labs have been added. The qualifications to go with labs have been added. Okay? That's different. That is not the same. It's entirely different. In the public sector, and I got some background plus a master's degree in public administration, it's very unusual for an elected official of a jurisdiction to have a executive director and CEO as a deputy. Very unusual. Also, for those who have large spheres of influence, like sheriffs and coroners and so forth, to have a paid CEO, executive director. As you said, sir, chief of operations, director of operations, chief operating officer, you'll sometimes see those, but not an executive level. Executive director means that is the authority day in and day out in that organization. They make the key decisions. Now, I realize that Mr. Branton argued that the coroner could be construed as part-time. As we go around trying to secure signatures on recall petitions, the average person in this parish, and I suspect that most of us in this room assume that with $200,000+ salary, that it's a full-time job. I think most of us assume that. I think it's a reasonable assumption. It's actually a lot more than that when you factor in what the private sector terms of full compensation of 401k, insurance, and so forth. I suspect for the Galvin, it's right around $250K. I don't know for a fact, vacation and everything, I think you're at $250. I think this $80,000 salary is $100K to the taxpayers. all right? Not 80. So Carl's point is, before you approve the salary, you've got to agree to the position. You can't get there from here in logical, normal decision-making. But that's what you're faced with. You've got to make the decision on the salary. I understand that, okay? I know that there's a question of legal risk should you not make the right decision. All I'm going to say is, advice is one thing from attorneys, but the only thing an attorney, in my experience, when your attorneys gave you advice, the one thing that they had to tell you was what you're going to do is illegal, unethical, or immoral. Other than that, it's just advice. So therefore, you make the hard decisions. That's what you get paid the big bucks for. I realize that yours may not be as big as the coroner's, but you're getting paid the big bucks to make the hard decisions. That's what leaders do, all right? That equals risk. Obviously, it equals risk. But I would submit to you that the fact that you don't have the audit in yet, you're making a decision without ground truth on what the true financial and organizational information is in that coroner. No leader in my former life made a decision to commit troops without good intelligence, without the information necessary before you take that kind of risk. But sometimes you had to take more risk than others. I submit to you, you have the upper hand here, not the coroner. You do. Use it. Finally, I would just say, you all know what's right here. You don't need Carl to come up here. You don't need Rick. You don't need anybody to come up. You know what's right here. It's just simply do the right thing that you intuitively know was right, because to agree to what the coroner wants is a waste and abuse of the taxpayers' public trust. So I think it's just finally time to say, Mr. Coroner, no. Not only no, hell no. Thank you.
Mr.
Jerry, we
Ernst,
got 1 minute left.
could I ask you a question real quick?
Yes,
And by the way, this is not a loaded question, and I hate having to ask it, okay? But, you know, given the road that we're proceeding down, even though our attorney and the law is clear, okay? We continue to proceed down the road of no, hell no, minimum wage, hell no, 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 no. Didn't you offer a suggestion today of a salary of $75,000 a year?
Absolutely, and I also factored up what it would be in total compensation. But again,
But you offered through an email to me.
That's right.
A salary of $75,000 a year.
Right, exactly.
We-
But
we have-
the paragraph above that addressed the position. The paragraph above says, I disagree that this position ought to be characterized as an executive director or CEO. All right? So if you want to call it the chief of operations, director of operations, because once you agree to that, salary against that position is there forever. Forever. And so what Carl's saying is, take a chance on the position. Because what Mr. Branton described is an entirely different position. So my email, I thought it was clear. If I wasn't, I'll make it clear right now. The first thing I addressed was the organization and addressed the position. That's exactly what I did. And then I came at the salary as being the easier of the two decisions. I thought we had two decisions tonight, but the easier of the two decisions. Once you agree on a position, then, normally in my former life and life now as a chief operating officer of a company, is you first decide the position, then you decide what the position's worth. Now we're deciding what it's worth, but we still haven't agreed on the position. At least I don't think we have, but that's my point.
Yes, sir, I understand. And let me say, so we don't mince words here, because, and I'm just speaking for myself, I get my dander up somewhat because this council has done a lot. And I will say this, and I don't mean it as a backhand slap to Dr. Galvin, but I'll just say this. This council has worked one hell of a lot more in a truly part-time position, which it's named as a part-time position, with no pensions, okay? But we all knew that when we ran for the position. We've worked one hell of a lot more trying to get through the minefield that we've gotten through. And we have a surplus now in the hands of parish government. we do have, and I have to correct you on this, sir, we do have in our research a very, very full understanding of the coroner's office. We have a very full understanding of each position in the coroner's office, of the role of each position in the coroner's office. We've made inquiries in our justice system as to the effectiveness of the different positions in the coroner's office. We have done the research that the people elected us to do. The reason I said we cannot rely on third-party research is because we have to do our own. That's our obligation to do it. Y'all are very entitled to do your own research, okay? But it seems to me that no matter where we go, there just seems to be something else coming, like minimum wage, or the $75,000 that you put on the value of the job today in an email to me is not really $75,000. Or we should argue over the title presented to us of executive director. I really don't care if the title is director of operations, executive director, chief admin person, manager. I managed one of the top 100 companies in the world for 28 years. My title was branch manager. It could have been general manager. What difference does it make? Doesn't make any difference. I was in effect a general manager, but my title was branch manager. That is not an issue before us tonight. What do we call it? It was presented to us as this title. That was the title before. We have documentation that shows us that was the title before, and it's our role to set a salary, and that's what we intend to do tonight. How much time do we have left? 1 minute. Okay, Mr. Court.
All right, I hope I'm not held exactly to the 60 seconds.
Well, sir, your colleagues have, and I understand your point, okay?
Okay.
But we announced ahead of time what the time was. We will be respectful.
Fine, then I'll be very succinct and direct.
Thank you.
Okay. My first question would be Mr. Branton's comments that they serve and do forensics DNA for all the other law enforcement agencies in the parish. Do they bill for that? It's my understanding that one entity cannot use their resources to the benefit of another entity without billing for it. My understanding and knowledge is that they do not.
Is that they do not bill for it?
Correct.
And Mr. Hutchinson, I can't tell you the answer to that.
And then I think it's required at this time, though you say very, very clearly that the council has done all their homework and everything, and I commend the council for stepping up to the plate in this issue. However, the fact remains that this issue would not exist had the council done their job when the initial law was written in 2007 and stood over and reviewed what was going on in the coroner's office.
Again, Mr. Hutchinson, I'm just speaking for myself. For the last 7 or 8 months, okay, for all of the good work that citizens can do, it's virtually impossible to get past the meeting and not have an asterisk put by our names by the 3 gentlemen that have stepped up here. And that's pretty sad, because I have to tell you something, sir. Mm-hmm. We're working diligently. We've done our research. We're doing our duty. And, you know,
I complimented you on that.
I understand that.
Now,
but
you
then you
weren't-
want to go back to 2007.
You weren't present in 2007.
I was present in 2007, sir, and I know exactly what we did. okay? It's easy to be a Monday morning quarterback, and if they wouldn't have done this and they wouldn't have done that, I had to read in the newspaper in the beginning, you all sticking up for Senator Crow because it wasn't his intent. That's what was on TV. We were at fault because it wasn't his intent. That's what Mr. Franzo was saying on TV.
That's not correct.
That is correct.
It is not correct. Excuse me, Mr. Bender, bottom line, I'm gonna say this just as simple as it can be said. No one that sits up here is on the state representative. We are not state representatives, we are council representatives. That bill was put up by A.G. Crow, that was voted by the representatives in the Senate, and the governor signed it. It has nothing to do with us.
It certainly
No,
does,
it does not.
because it gave in that law that you had the responsibility of oversight.
Mr.
You can
Chairman.
blow wind all you want, so it doesn't change the facts.
Sir, you're completely off topic, you're out of line, and I
Mr.
ask that you sit down.
Jerry,
Your time is up. Mr. Branton, how much time does Mr. Branton have left? 9 minutes.
Okay, I'll try not to take all 9. And I agree with what I just heard. Whether we call it an executive director or director of operations or whatever it is, makes no difference. This job, Ms. Como was budgeted, when she held the position, it was budgeted at $125,000. That's in the budget that was published, and I'm sure all of you have looked at it. The position that we're asking, that this position be filled by someone for $10,000 less. We believe that to be a reasonable number based upon our research. When we did this national search, and we did a national search, we came up with 16 possible candidates. It's not a wide pool within the United States. This is a specialty operation. It's a coroner's office. And as to the structure of the coroner's office, that's decided by the coroner who is duly elected. They make that choice. And what we're talking about tonight is about a salary for a position for the office. We are not talking about the current coroner. And when you look at coroners, they are medical doctors. Most of them do not have all of the technical skills from a medical standpoint to run and have full knowledge of each operation. And I have to chuckle at the thought that anybody would think that I am trying to bully this council. That's certainly not a possibility, at least in my lifetime, not with this council.
You're not doing this, Joe.
And the money we're talking about, it was presented to the voters and approved by the voters, and it must be spent wisely. I don't think anyone in this room would disagree. And I applaud the council for doing its own homework. You know, we're describing the same job, but as with any job, as technology changes and you're dealing with forensic science, including determination of causes of death, you need to look at your management and bring in the personnel that are qualified to do it. We have an opportunity to move this operation forward, this office forward, to provide leadership to the excellent men and women who are providing great service to the citizens of this parish. And, you know, we've had suggestions of $75,000 and $80,000. And I respect those numbers. And I'm sure you did your homework when you came up with the $80,000, and I heard Councilman Dean mention that the last time I was here. If that's the number you vote, that's within your right. If that's the number that you tell the coroner's office this is what you will do, then we go back to square one. I do not believe that this candidate or any other candidate as qualified will take a pay cut. And in terms of what we do, just so that some of the people who don't do the kind of work I do understand. Prior to the coroner's office, we had cases in this parish we couldn't prosecute promptly because we couldn't get the information back from the straight crime lab. We had people who committed crimes that were not in jail where they need to be because the scientific evidence necessary to prove the identity of the perpetrator was not timely furnished. The coroner's office does that, and they do it very well. We have an excellently run organization. You're also at $80,000 asking someone to come in and take a salary less than some of the people that they might supervise. I think that's potentially untenable. But once again, this is not about Peter Gallivan. It's about the office of the coroner, which serves the citizens of this parish very effectively. I would ask that you approve. I understand the motion in front of me, Mr. Bender. And I agree, yes, you all do work hard. I've known some of you for a very long time. But I'm asking that this motion as to the extent of 80,000 be voted down and that we reconsider the 115. Thank you.
Okay, how much more time does Mr. Branton have? Okay, and what about this side? Okay, so, no, Ms. Stevens, your time is up.
You said that you might ask for
We might.
additional time
We might, but we're not.
because you don't care what the public has to say?
No, ma'am. I'm not getting into another debate with you tonight, okay? We had 15 minutes, okay? This side has used it. Mr. Branton, do you have anything else to say?
No, sir, unless someone else comes, at which no, sir, unless you would allow someone from CCSD or the audience to say some things, at which point I would like the opportunity to respond if that happens.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I prefer that we give her at least a minute. I think that'd be the right thing to do.
If that's the will of the council, certainly willing to do
I'll
that.
second that.
Ms. Stevens, you have a minute.
Thank you. Terry Stevens, 725 Dove Park Road. All I wanted to say or ask was why the council feels like they're being put on the spot when we pay your meager salaries to do the part-time work you do for us, and for us to come up and express an opinion, whether it is in agreement with your opinions or not, isn't really the issue. The issue is the public should have the opportunity and the right to express their opinions without being chastised by the council. I'm so disappointed that this has happened now several meetings in a row when council members have disagreed with the public. Isn't it your job to listen to your
Ms.
constituents?
Stevens,
1 minute.
You're off of the topic. You are preaching to us. Okay, when this
I'm
is not-
disappointed,
excuse me.
very disappointed.
Oh, okay. You're disappointed. Every time you come here, you're disappointed. Okay? Because if we don't vote the way that you like us to vote, you're disappointed.
You don't ask for the public's opinion like the
Ma'am,
rules suggest
we gave
is the
15
policy.
We agreed on 15 minutes. Two of my colleagues just added a minute, and you start off, instead of talking about the topic, you want to tell us that we really
This
have no
is the
interest in
topic.
what you have to say.
No, you're not interested in what the public has to say.
Ma'am.
And you're chastising them, and I'm disappointed. That's all I wanted to let you know. I wish you would do a better job. You tried earlier tonight, and I appreciated that. But unfortunately, with Mr. Ernst, you were very combative, and I'm disappointed about that, and I hope that
Well,
you do
you
better
know
in
what,
the
Ms.
future.
Stevens, I am, believe me when I tell you, I am so sorry to disappoint you. And I'm sure every council member feels the same way. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yes. Mr. Branton?
I don't see a need to respond. I understand her feelings, but I believe I've responded to the topic at hand. I don't think I see need to say anything further at this time, sir.
Okay. Well, before we, Jake, did you want to say something?
Yes.
Go ahead.
For the members of the audience who are not here tonight and are viewing this, if I'm summing this up right, Mr. Branton, is that basically the coroner is asking for this position because, in a sense, other departments have this in a general idea. Am I pretty correct on that?
No, sir.
Okay. He is asking for this position to help him run his office, and he has compared other offices that have a similar position. Is that close?
Mr. Groby, the coroner's office is asking to fill the existing position that has been there for many years. It
Okay.
is a position, whether you want to call it Director of Operations or anything else, manages day-to-day operations. I would make the analogy that we have a parish president that the voters elected, just as they elected the coroner. We have a chief administrative officer, we have 2 deputy administrative officers who I'm sure help the parish president do her job by managing and informing her of day-to-day operations. It's the same type of activity here. And I would just say that this is a position that has been there on the books for years, and I know you know that because you've done your homework, sir.
Okay. Well, for those who out there who don't quite understand this, the way I'm looking is, I think some of my colleagues may look at this also, just our opinion, is that the difference is that if we flip the other side of the coin, most of these coroner's offices that you've used as a reference have a full-time coroner for about half the salary. Why can't the same logic apply to that?
Okay. Mr. Groby, everyone who is elected coroner is elected as a coroner, not a part-time coroner. There's no label part-time or full-time. They're elected as the coroner. And first of all, if you want to go back to the East Baton Rouge Parish, sir, and I'm happy to give this to you. I would point you to, this was filed May of 2013 from East Baton Rouge Parish, from Dr. Clark. And when he lists his employment information, sir, every box is checked off part-time. He does not even consider himself a full-time employee of his coroner's office, and his salary is $200,000.
Okay,
I
excuse me.
understand that.
So,
Excuse
But
me.
in your comparison, when you spoke to Mr. Rhodes in the Times-Picayune reporter, you also made a comparison about Pat. Well, I can tell you this, from knowing her, she works 40 hours a week. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Belisario?
I just want to comment on this issue. You know, and other council members know, that we're beyond frustrated over this. There was 2 things that have happened to me since I ran for office and I've served that I didn't expect. Number one, I didn't expect in 2008 I'd sit as a member of the Board of Review on tax assessments when there were 7,000 people irate at us. Okay, number one. Number two, I never saw this coming. I was running for office in 2007. I says, but one thing I've learned from that, I think everybody here has, when we look at items on the agenda, we look for attachments. Some of them are intergovernmental agreements, CEAs. I want to see them to see what's in them. I don't know what was done back in 2007, if the CEA or some document was attached to a bland written ordinance to determine what was going to happen. I put the blame on this on A.G. Crow. When it's all said and done, I don't care what he says, I have a tape of him testifying in front of a finance committee. And what he says is not in the law. So that has bothered me for a long time. I didn't like the idea of setting a salary on an executive director because I don't feel that there needs to be one. But this law doesn't allow us to start changing titles. So that's how we evolved to where we are. This law only allows us to set the salary, and I had debate with my wife and everybody else on what this person should be paid. And we evolved to this number, and I think we got to move forward with it, and we will see what happens through the legislative authors report and all the other stuff that's going on to see what the fallout is going to be. Next week, we got to deal with millages, and one of the millages we're looking at is for this office. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Falconer, can you tell me between the 3 of y'all who was first?
I just bashed mine.
Reed, you were first? Okay.
However
Mr.
you want to do it,
Falconer.
I'll defer to anybody.
Mr. Falconer.
Well, I want to, we've said it over and over again. We need to remind the public that what we're here to talk about is the salary for this position. It's not in do not even have the constitutional authority to set the salary for the coroner. So while that is good for perhaps cocktail table discussion, we don't have that authority.
Correct.
But I think we owe it to the public to explain some of the rationale on where, generally speaking, we've come down about where this salary range should fall. And I do think that General Ernst is correct in the sense that only because I think we need to clarify that it does, when you're defining the position, it by virtue of that definition then leads to what your assumption is of what the appropriate salary should be. So I've been taking some notes based on Mr. Branton's presentation, and I think it's very illuminating as you go through some of those notes, how I have arrived at my position and my feeling about what the salary range should be for this specific position. Mr. Branton has pointed out that coroners are medical doctors, and they're not qualified necessarily to operate all aspects of the office. But that they are qualified to handle the basic areas of the office operation, which he delineated as the psychs, the toxicology, the DNA, the death investigations, and the morgue. Well, when I look at the overall parish coroner's organization chart, I can see that there are medical doctors throughout the organization chart. They are very qualified, and we all recognize highly qualified and well-functioning positions that are covering all of these positions. So you don't necessarily need a medical doctor to operate the office. That's not to say, now we're not talking about the coroner itself, we're talking about specifically this position. He also mentioned that if we approve this salary, that the salary then would be less than some of the people that they supervise. Well, that may very well be the case, but in my opinion, eventually I think as a body, we should take the initiative to review all of the salaries ultimately in this organization chart and adjust them appropriately. I appreciate the applause, but we're talking about just dollars and cents here right now, and so I want to keep it to that. Mr. Brand did make a very emotional, statement about not being able to get information from the crime lab at the state, and that certainly the implication that I took away from that was that somehow we were less safe in this parish because the state was not able to produce crime lab information. I don't think that's the case, and I don't think we should allow that to be stated out here. And I guess my bottom line, just to summarize, is that I think what we're actually hiring here is an office manager, however you want to define him, whatever name you want to put to it. And so when he said that we really didn't have a wide pool to draw from, if you're looking for a wide pool to draw from, then hire what you need in this position, which is basically a person to operate the day-to-day operation of the office, not necessarily provide the additional medical qualifications that you're already qualified with other personnel within the organization for psych, toxicology, DNA, death investigations, and more. So I think what we're doing here is hiring an office manager, and I think that the suggestion in fact, the motion has been made that $80,000 is the appropriate salary for an office manager. If I were hiring an office manager, I would think that was a gracious salary. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Falconer. Mr. Dean.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. There's a couple of things I'd like to say. One is, Reed articulated a lot of what I was thinking. When you look at the pay grade, or when we looked at the pay grade the other night when we were looking at the justification for the salary, the pay grade of the parish employees, and I can't remember, help me out with the numbers, it's like 10, 11, and 12 or something like that. Council administrator would come in around in the 80s. Council administrator, meaning running this office, it comes in around the 80s. There's not very many that went above that. And so it's very simple to me. You know, if we don't have a choice but to fund this, position and then set the salary, that makes it very simple to me, that pay grade that is around what we're looking at, that certainly would, and the parish coroner's office being another parish department, I don't understand why we could even argue that point. The executive director, I believe, in Jefferson Parish was 83. The part-time coroner in Jefferson Parish was making 77. And so, I mean, it kind of looks good to me, sounds good to me. So that's, you know, I'm going to go for the 80 when we do vote. But before I close my mouth here, I want to talk about, Mr. Franzo was talking about the psychiatric side to it, and I want to clarify some things. I mean, that happens to be my field of you know, what I've been in for the last several years, 30 years or whatever. There were, in 2012, there were 244 orders of protective custody. All right, and where I'm going with this is that I do think, and we've all discussed this, I do think that we get, because of what the coroner has created, I guess, with all of the stuff that's going on with him right now, it has kind of put a shadow over some very, very, very good employees in the coroner's office. Incredibly professional and incredibly good at what they do. And so I'm going to talk specifically real fast. There were 244 orders of protective custodies in 2012. There were 3,569 PECs, Physician's Emergency Commitment. What that means is they were either homicidal, suicidal, or gravely disabled. All right, those are the three criteria you got to meet. 3,569. Of that, because what happens, you get committed, and then the coroner's office has to come out to wherever you are, usually a psych hospital or an ER, and then the coroner's office, the person who they contract with or employ, goes and visits with the person who is suicidal, homicidal, or gravely disabled, and they have to decide, do I want to commit this person for up to 28 days? It's got to be up to 15 days, and then its substance abuse could be possibly 28 days. There were 2,143 of those in the year of 2012. If you split that up over a month, that's 179 a month. All right? The going rate to pay a physician to do commitments is $100 per commitment, per CEC. All right? So that would have been, what, $17,900 per month. Her salary, this person's salary, is about $15,000 per month. So that's well below what the going rate is for CECs. All right, and they do a fantastic job. So it's well below 15,000, is well below 17,900. And she's also given the title of Director of Mental Health Services for the parish. So I wanted to clarify that it just, I didn't like that was getting caught up in all of that. But back to the original subject, I think 80,000 is a justified salary.
Thank you, Mr. Dean. Mr. Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted, and Reed said a lot of the things that I wanted to say, but the salaries of the current people in the coroner's office are, you know, Mr. Branton wants us to compare this guy to what they're making. Well, they're making too darn much already. So we need to bring this guy down to a realistic salary that this executive director, this office manager, what have you. And then we need to bring these other people down to the regular salaries. I'm looking at hundreds, 111,000, 180,000, 106,000, 203,000. How many, six-figure positions do we need when you only have 24 people in the whole operation? Doesn't make sense to me. So, I think we're probably paying this executive director, or whatever y'all want to call it, too much when we went offering him 80,000, because they already got people there that could do that job.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. Mr. Branton, just a few things I want to share with you, because I think that it's important that, you know, you take this back to the coroner, okay? First of all, in the research that Don did, that we've all done, the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office, by and large, and to a very, very high degree, has excellent employees, okay? And I think we, as a council, need to send that morale booster to them tonight, okay?
Yes, sir.
We have very, very, very good employees. We've checked this out through attorneys. We've checked it out through the criminal justice system. We've checked it out through agencies that deal with the coroner's office, okay? And the rank and file, and by that I'm talking about from highly educated forensic people with bachelor's degrees in chemistry and biology, bachelor's degrees in forensics, master's degrees in forensics. These people have helped win court cases in the criminal justice system. We know that from our research. They've also at times helped find people innocent through DNA testing, et cetera. However, so I want to send, this is just me personally, a morale booster to the people that work in the coroner's office, okay? 2 people have already resigned. They're gone. I don't need to send a morale booster to them, okay? But the people that are there are working very, very hard from everything we've been told. I want to share a little bit more information because this is important that you and the coroner understand that we understand what we're doing, okay?
I have not said that you
No,
do
no,
not.
no, 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 no. I asked you to pass this on.
Yes, sir, I understand.
Okay, I'm not pointing directly at you. I apologize if I said it that way. I'd like you to pass it on. The Jefferson Parish Coroner's Office has a chief forensic pathology director. They have forensic pathologists. They have a toxicology manager. So does the St. Tammany Parish Coroner's Office. We use it, and I like the way we use it. We use it with MS degrees instead of MDs, which would cost us double, okay? As far as our coroner that is doing the major workload there, the deputy coroner, he's at a salary of about $180,000 a year. What we found out through our investigations and research is that the other deputy coroners at the other 2 places that we mentioned, I think one, and specifically in Jefferson Parish, are between $185,000 and $215,000 a year. So what we learned through research, we didn't go into this with our own mind made up, is that Dr. DeFatta apparently is not overpaid.
I would agree with that.
As an MD pathologist. I'm just giving you my opinion,
Thank you.
okay? Might there be some people? There might be, okay? But by and large, we checked investigators against investigators in the same general salary range, okay? But I need to say this to you because we're in this mess, okay? And these people over here are frustrated, and I understand that, okay? We're frustrated and aggravated. We're in this mess because your employer put us in this mess. That's just a fact. he can put part-time down on that report. He should put part-time on that report, because he's part-time, barely. And he's drawing $203,000 a year with a full-time medical practice down the street. And salaries got upped for certain, I don't want to say special people, because then I would be surmising that there was something wrong. For certain people, salaries got jacked up quite a bit. So the question becomes that we had to answer to ourselves is $80,000 or $75,000 or whatever the motion was going to be, the accurate salary, like Mr. Anthony Burris in Jefferson Parish, who, here's his job title from them. The Director of Operations shall be responsible for the day-to-day operations and general oversight of the Jefferson Parish Coroner's Office. He makes more money than his boss at $83,000 a year. He has the authority to carry out the responsibilities in accordance with the direction and policies established by the coroner. His major functions includes mission, policy, and planning, monitors and evaluates the effectiveness, recommends policy changes to the coroners, ensures compliance with state law, administration and support, assures quality and stability through their programs, discipline, termination, and compensation, management. He supervises plant and property, investigations, sexual assault services, mental health services, pathology, toxicology and morgue operation, legal compliance, community and government relations. Now here's Jefferson Parish with a truly part-time coroner, and I understand the law does not say whether a coroner is full-time or part-time. But all of us as citizens understand that the Jefferson Parish coroner is drawing a salary of $77,000 a year or thereabouts, and he has a full-time medical practice. And he has an $83,000 director of operations. They supplied us with his job description. Now, what we have is a coroner who's making $204,000 a year from the taxpayers of his parish, and whatever he can make in a full-time medical practice. And I'm going with the $80,000 because Jefferson Parish has really mimicked here. 77 for the coroner, 83 for the director of operations. We've got an absentee coroner, and that's the reason why we need, or he thinks we need, a director of operations or executive director. Okay? So you can't have it both ways. That's why the people are in such an uproar and the council is in an uproar. But to be fair, we based it on the value of the job, not whether Dr. Galvin was there, not there, how much was he there, etc. And the value of the job says, in the biggest parish in this state, $83,000 a year. Thank you, Mr. Falconer.
Caught me off guard there for a second. I just wanted to, and I said this when we talked about this the last time, and I just want to reiterate my frustration. When you're speaking to Mr. Branton and you're talking about his employer, remember that he is not an employee of the coroner's office.
Yeah, he's contract.
He's actually your client. I mean, Mr. Branton is a paid attorney in here representing the coroner. I just wish we could have been able to deliver those kind words and perhaps some of this other frustration to the coroner himself tonight.
And Mr. Falconer, I will tell you, and I will tell my colleagues, and I will tell the public, and Mr. Branton can tell you that this is correct. In 2 emails that I had with Mr. Branton, very good emails, his were professional, I think mine were professional back, I invited the coroner to attend. And let me just say this. Everybody in this council knows this, and I hope everybody in this audience knows this. We would have kept our discussions with the coroner strictly to the issue of salary. We would not have gone off on to the sexual harassment suit or the state legislative auditor or the FBI raiding the office, okay? But he was invited, and I want everybody in the council and in the public to know that twice in 1 week in an email to Mr. Branton twice. That doesn't mean he had to come. I just wanted for the record that Dr. Galvin was invited, okay? Anybody else from the council? Okay, we have a motion and we have, Gene?
I was just, as a call for the question.
Motion and a second. Please vote with your lights for an $80,000 annual salary.
Motion passes, 10 yeas, 3 nays, 1 absent.
Thank you.
One quick statement, Mr.
Yes, sir.
And I want to thank you for your time tonight. As you know, because I said it last time, and I'm sure you're aware from doing your homework, not only do we have the executive director position office open, but we also have the chief financial officer position vacant at this time. So I would like to start working with the council on what the council would deem an appropriate salary for that position, as well as when we go forward with the selection process, the interview process and so forth. It would be nice to know what we can discuss in terms of salary with those people. I'm not sure the proper way to get it on the next agenda, sir, so I'm just saying to you tonight, I look forward to working with you on it, and I'll send the written request to the parish so that we can go from there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Branton. Mr. Canulette.
Chuck,
Yes, sir.
will you please relay to the coroner to please show up and come help us? Because we're doing our best with the information we got. He's got to have some input. If he cares just a little bit about his office and the people, we're not, like Jerry said, we're not going to beat him up. We'll meet in private just so he can answer the questions we need. So please ask him to participate.
Mr. Canulette, I'll certainly pass that on to him. However, I viewed it as unnecessary for Mr. Bender to mention the things he just did, which shows me that it would not be on task, on target. But I will pass that request on, sir.
Well, wait, excuse me, Mr. Branton. You have an objection to what I just mentioned about the coroner?
Well,
I was letting my colleague, Mr. Falconer, know that it was communicated, you communicated to me, I communicated back to you, that if assistance was needed, Dr. Galvin was welcome to attend.
Sir, I will agree with your statement that both of our emails to each other were very professional, okay? And I would expect nothing less out of you.
Sure.
Okay? What I was referring to, Mr. Bender, was the last statements that you made about the FBI, the legislative auditor, in the context of this.
I said we wouldn't have asked them about that.
I understand. I'm just making my point.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me, Mr. Stefanczyk. Okay, council, we have another matter on this topic, and we would have to do it off the floor. I need a motion to open off the floor.
For what? Just an off the floor?
A resolution regarding the St. Tammany Parish coroner's salary.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Motion by Mr. Groby, seconded by Ms. O'Brien. Please vote.
Okay. I didn't see that. Now he did. I'm looking at Maureen's. There was no one at my desk.
Mr. Stefanczyk, Mr. Artigue.
Don, do you have a copy of the resolution for Richard?
Sorry, it was buried under another document.
You should read it because it's off the floor and they don't know.
Yes. Yeah, I like this.
We all need to vote.
Thank you.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Okay, this is sponsored by the council. It is a resolution to request that the St. Tammany Parish Coroner reduce his salary. Whereas the St. Tammany Parish Council has reviewed the salaries being received by coroners in several parishes within the state of Louisiana, and whereas it has been determined that said salaries are based upon several factors, one being whether a coroner maintains a substantial private medical practice, and whereas the current St. Tammany Parish coroner pays himself the highest salary of any coroner in the state, and continues to maintain a substantial private medical practice, and whereas in the interest of fairness to the taxpayers of St. Tammany, a reduction in the salary of the coroner is hereby requested. The parish of St. Tammany hereby resolves that the St. Tammany Parish Coroner is requested to reduce his salary commensurate with the salaries of other similarly situated coroners within the state of Louisiana. And I might add Jefferson Parish would be a good example. I need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. O'Brien, seconded by Mr. Groby. Please vote. Excuse me. Before we vote, does anybody want to discuss this? Okay, Ms. Stevens. Oh, God, I swear to goodness.
I'm just so happy you asked. I really appreciate it, honestly.
I'm pretty shocked. My name is Eric Johansson. I live on 11164 Haino Road, Madisonville.
Yeah.
You all have resolved in the past to ask him to resign. Our parish president has asked him to resign. I cannot imagine why you would compromise with a man who's not even coming to see you tonight. He doesn't even come and see you, and you're compromising with him in his absence, offering him to reduce his salary, which personally I think would be unconstitutional for him to do. He needs to resign. That's what we've asked him to do. That's what you've asked him to do. That should be the line. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And sir, just to comment back, we asked him to resign months ago. He obviously is not, okay? We cannot reduce, just so you'll know, the law does not allow us to reduce the coroner's salary during this term. We're simply, but the law does allow him to voluntarily reduce his salary, okay? Okay, thank you. Yes, sir, did you want to come up? No, okay, thank you. Let's vote, please.
Motion is unanimous, one absent.
Motion to adjourn?